المبعوث إلى كافة الورى بشيرا ونذيرا وداعيا إلى الله بإذنه وسراجا منيرا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل وعلى أهل بيته أئمة الهدى ومصابيح الدجى الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فالله هو الولي صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. My respected elders, brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Last night we examined those extraordinary phenomena that occurred after the martyrdom of Sayyid al-Shuhada Aba Abdullah al-Hussein salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi. Phenomena such as some of the earth of Karbala turning into blood. Secondly, the solar eclipse happening. Thirdly, the fact that there was some black dust that rose towards the sky. 4, the fact that red dust or red rain, in some reports, the rain that was there was blood falling down to the earth. Fifthly, the fact that the earth and the sky, they all wept for Abu Abdullah. 6, the fact that the sky turned red. 7, the shaking of the earth of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the sky. 8, the sun and its rays turning red. 9, blood being found under every stone. And 10, the crying of all created beings for the martyrdom of Abu Abdullah. So, when we look at these phenomena, we said that these reports that talk about these phenomena not simply be dismissed as being unreliable or being far-fetched or exaggerating the incident, because they are mentioned in numerous authentic books, not just of the Shia, but some of these are actually mentioned in the books of our Sunni brothers and sisters as well. So therefore we were saying that how can we explain these occurrences, especially bearing in mind that a lot of these things that we talked about, they're not even alive. They are inanimate. They don't have life. Things like the earth and the sky, or other things, if they have life, such as animals and trees and plants, how can they have that level of intelligence, that level of awareness, that they even know someone like an imam has died? Never mind all the other reports that we looked at that talked about believers and teachers of good and the seekers of knowledge. They all pray for them, they seek forgiveness for them, and so on and so forth. Never mind Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. So we said that inshallah we will look at 2 explanations as to how everything can cry for Abu Abdullah. And yesterday we looked at the first explanation, which was based on the verses of the Quran and traditions. And the conclusion we reached was that, first of all, every single thing has an awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and of His awliya, those who are close to Him, His prophets, His imams, the true believers and righteous people, according to their level of creation, according to the level of their existence. And then we went on to say that whoever acts in a way that is in accordance with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will, the more someone does this, the more they will be connected with other created beings of Allah. And the more they are connected with Allah's creation, the more these other things will mourn for that person when he dies. So then we said that in the case of Abu Abdullah, this was taken to its ultimate extent, because Sayyid al-Shuhada was killed in a way that was truly exceptional. It was truly unique. And therefore, when these things are so connected to such a personality, of course they will mourn such a person in a unique way. And this is why we saw all of those reports that talk about how everything mourned him in such a unique way. So this was really a summary of yesterday's discussion based on the first explanation. And today, inshallah, I would like to present the second explanation as to how everything cried for Imam Hussein. And this one will be done in accordance with two related concepts. The first concept is that of the position of the Imams in Allah's system of creation. And secondly, and very much related to this, is the whole concept of the Imam's Wilaya Takwiniya. So inshallah, let's start our second explanation with salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So based on this second explanation as to how everything cried for Abu Abdullah, the first part that I would like to put forward is the fact that the Imams have a unique position in Allah's system of creation. By that, what I mean is, when we look at the verses of the Quran, we see, for example, that every single blessing that we have, every goodness, every grace that reaches this world originates from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In Surah Al-Nahl, verse number 53, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا بِكُم مِّن نِعْمَةٍ فَمِنَ اللَّهِ. Whatever blessing that you have, it originates from Allah. So this is our starting point, that every blessing and grace and goodness that we have in this world originates from Allah. But now the question arises, how do those blessings reach us on the earth? For this, we need to look at exactly what we were mentioning earlier, the position of the Imams in Allah's created system. For indeed, these blessings that originate from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they get to us through channels. And these channels are none other than the A'imma alayhimus salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. So when these blessings that originate from Allah, they come down to all of His created beings, they do so through specific channels. And the channel in every age is the Imam of that age. The channel for Allah's blessings is the Imam of that particular age. And therefore we see that the Imam occupies a very special position in Allah's system of creation. So indeed, when we come across traditions, and I'm sure you've all heard of these type of traditions that say, if there was no Imam in any particular time, in any particular age, then what would happen? The world would be destroyed. Nothing would cease to exist. Now we understand why. Why would everything cease to exist? Why would everything be destroyed if the Imam of the age was not there? It's because the Imam is the channel of Allah's blessings to get to Allah's creation. The channel of blessings that flows from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to everything else comes through the Imam. And therefore, if the Imam is not present, then of course no blessings can come to Allah's creation. If no blessing can come to Allah's creation, of course it'll be destroyed. Even for a fraction of a second, if that was to happen, the whole world would be destroyed. So perhaps you've heard traditions such as the one from our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, salawatullah wa salamu alayhi. When he says, لَوْ بَقِيَتِ الْأَرْضُ بِغَيْرِ إِمَامٍ لَسَاخَتْ. He says that if the world was to remain without an Imam, it would be destroyed. So now we understand why. Because it is through the Imam that all of Allah's blessing flows to Allah's creation. Indeed, we can go further and say, actually, the Imam of the age, whichever age we are referring to, the Imam is always that means of connection between Allah's creation and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Perhaps you will remember this part of Dua Nudba that we recite all the time, There's a part in this dua where we are calling out that where is the Imam, where is the Imam? And we start off by using the expression Aina. I'm sure you all recall that part of the dua. And we refer to the Imam in different ways, that where are you, meaning that we are longing for you to come. One of the expressions that starts with Aina is Aina sababul muttasilu bayna al-ardi was-sama. Where is that sababul muttasil? Sababul muttasil means the means of connection between what and what? Between ardi was sama, between Allah's creation and Allah. So we actually call to the Imam that, oh Imam, where are you? Where are you who is this means of connection between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It's telling us exactly the same thing, that the position of the Imam in Allah's system of creation is one of a very necessary and absolutely essential channel for His grace to reach us. He is the means by which we connect to Allah, and Allah connects to us by sending His divine grace and blessings to us all. So now, my brothers and sisters, when the Imam occupies such a position, is it any wonder therefore that when the Imam of the age has this special position of connecting everything to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and without His presence nothing can exist, therefore when that Imam is slaughtered, when that Imam is martyred in such a brutal way, such as what happened to Abu Abdullah, and everything else is connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through that Imam, of course therefore it is completely reasonable, logical and rational to say and to understand why everything would mourn the departure of that blessed Imam. Because everything is so connected to that Imam. Without that Imam, nothing would exist. And therefore, when that Imam goes, everything is going to be so unhappy. Especially when he leaves the world having been slaughtered in such a unique way. It is no surprise, therefore, that everything in the universe mourned Abu Abdullah on the day of Ashura after his martyrdom in such a unique way that was never seen before because of his unique shahada. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So this was the first part of the second explanation with regards to how everything can mourn the martyrdom of Abu Abdullah based on the position of the Imams in Allah's created order. But like I said, there is a second and very much related concept with regards to this explanation, and that is the concept of the Imam's wilaya takwiniya. This wilaya takwiniya, I'm sure you've all heard a lot about wilaya, and you all know that wilaya means divine authority, divine guardianship. Now, what is wilaya takwiniya? Wilaya takwiniya is an element, it's a dimension of wilaya. It's an aspect of wilaya. What this refers to sometimes is translated as creative wilaya. Takwiniya, the creative wilaya, the creative authority or guardianship. Now what is all this about? First of all, what this says, what this concept is all about is the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses those who are close to Him with this wilaya takwiniya. And with this wilaya, the person who has it, the wali, he is able to effect a change in creation. The person who has this wilaya takwiniya is able to change things in Allah's creation. He's able to have this discretion over creation, and he's able to change it in some way. Now, of course, this is always done bi-iznillah. It's always done with the permission of Allah. Because these people, the awliya of Allah, the walis of Allah, who are given this permission, who are given this great ability, of course they are so close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they wouldn't do anything that goes against His will. It's all in accordance with His will and with His permission. So now, let's look at this in a little more depth. First of all, we have to look at wilayah in terms of the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is the absolute wali. In the verse that I recited at the beginning of this lecture, it is actually from Surah Ashura, verse number 9, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that actually wilayah is primarily, it belongs to Him. In the first instance, wilayah only belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in this verse, He says, فَاللَّهُ هُوَ الْوَلِي. It is Allah who is the wali. He is the guardian. Right? So this is our starting position. That Allah is the wali mutlaq, we call it. The absolute, the all-perfect wali and the guardian. So now, how is it that others can have this wilayah? Well, what happens is that on a secondary basis, at a secondary level, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses certain people with this wilayah. He bestows this wilayah on certain people. He grants them this wilayah takwiniyah. So for example, do we have verses in the Quran that talk about this? The fact that Allah blesses others with this wilayah. When I say blesses others with this wilayah, it is really about what they term manifestation of Allah's name. I'm sure you've heard this before. When people manifest Allah's names, they are able to manifest His attributes at their own particular level. So, when there's somebody who's knowledgeable, that person, the alim, he is manifesting the name what? The attribute of ilm. The name Al-Alim. Allah is Al-Alim, the all-knowledgeable. But this alim, he is, of course, he is not Al-Alim, but he is Alim. He is somehow manifesting that attribute of Allah in his character. The same goes with other attributes. Allah is Al-Hakim. He is the all-wise. But if there's a wise person, he is manifesting the attribute of hikmah and wisdom. And he is Hakim to his own, at his own level. A very limited level, of course. No one can be at that level of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but people can manifest His attributes at a lower level. It is the same with wilayah. Like we just saw, Allah is Al-Wali. He is the Wali Mutlaq, absolute Wali. However, people can manifest the attribute of wilayah if Allah allows them to. He gives them this permission and blesses them with this wilayah, with this attribute. So now in the Quran, do we have any verses that tell us this? Can we prove our point by looking at the verses of the Quran? You will recall that famous verse of wilayah itself. The verse of wilayah in Surah Ma'idah, verse number 55. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? He says, Innama waliyukumullah. Isn't it? That indeed Allah is your wali. Fine. But then he goes on to explain that there are others who are also your wali. Wa rasuluh. And Allah's messenger. He is also your wali. Not just that. وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. And those who believe. And then of course Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it very clear who these people are. الَّذِينَ يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ وَهُمْ رَاكِعُونَ. And we know that this verse was revealed with regard to only one person. So, the verse says, Allah is your wali. So is His Rasul. He's also your wali. So are those who believe. Who are those who believe? He says, those who establish the prayer. And those who give zakat, but in a particular state. They give zakat when they're in the state of ruku'. And this was revealed with regard to only one person, and that is of course Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi. And therefore we can use this verse to prove that point. that yes, wilaya primarily starts and belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is al-wali, but he is able to bestow this wilaya upon others, such as his prophets, such as those true believers, such as the Aima alayhimus salam. And therefore these other people, they can have this wilaya takwiniya. Now my brothers and sisters, when somebody has this wilaya takwiniya, let's link it with our discussion about everything mourning about Abdullah. So somebody has this authority to change creation, and I'll give you many examples in a moment. Isn't it any wonder therefore when this great wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is martyred in such a brutal way? Is it any wonder that the rest of creation would mourn for that person? Of course, we should not be surprised therefore, because this person has that amazing wilaya takwiniya. Now let's see in the Quran, what examples from the Quran again can we give of people having this amazing wilaya takwiniya in order to affect creation. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. There are indeed many examples in the Quran that talk about this, and now inshallah whenever we read the Quran and whenever we see these, we come across these examples, inshallah we'll be able to understand them much better in regards to this whole discussion about wilayah takwiniya. So for example, Nabi Isa, peace be upon him. Nabi Isa, of course, he was one of the great prophets and he had wilayah takwiniya. What examples can we give? Well, Nabi Isa, one of the things that he could do was that he could take the form of a bird made out of clay, isn't it? And then he was able to breathe into this clay form of a bird, and what would happen? That clay model, that clay form would become a living bird. That's wilayah takwiniya, the ability and the discretion, the authority to change creation by the permission of Allah. Another example, Nabi Isa, what else could he do? He was able to cure the leper. He was able to cure the blind. How is it possible? Wilayah takwiniya, able to affect a change in Allah's creation. Another thing that he was able to do, he was able to raise the dead. How is that possible? Well, it's possible because he was manifesting the name Al-Wali that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed him with. So that's Nabi Isa. Indeed, this whole point about bi'idhni, with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you have a look at verse 110 of Surah Al-Ma'idah, it mentions the same examples with regards to Nabi Isa that I just talked about. And amazingly, 4 times in that one verse, 4 times, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, bi'idhni, 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 meaning with my permission. So we should never think that these people can ever do any of these things without Allah's permission, independently, not at all. It is always with Allah's permission. They are agents of Allah's work on the earth. Allah does His work through such great awliya with His permission. So that was Nabi Isa. Do we have any other examples? We have plenty of examples. What about Nabi Sulaiman? We know that Nabi Sulaiman had control over the winds and the jinns. Again, through this wilayah takwiniya. Any other examples? Nabi Yusuf, what does he say to his brothers? He says to his brothers, take my shirt to my father and cast it upon his face and he will regain his sight. And this is what they do, and this is what happens. Affecting change in creation by manifesting the name Al-Wali. How about the greatest of Allah's prophets, Rasulul A'zam sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So many miracles that he was able to perform. Just one of them, we read at the beginning of Surah Al-Qamar, وَانشَقَّ الْقَمَرِ, and the moon split. How is that possible? It is possible because he was able to manifest this name Al-Wali in his character. So now we have all of these examples of wilayah takwiniyah from the Quran. When we look at traditions, then there are so many more we can give examples of. I'll just mention one with regards to this point, and then we'll move on, inshallah. This example, I particularly wanted to mention it because it is from Nahju Balagha. And unfortunately, Nahju Balagha is one of those books that we do not talk about enough. In my opinion, it is one of those books that unfortunately, it is sometimes neglected. So let's have a look. In Sermon 192, it is regarded as the Sermon of Al-Qasi'ah. Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullah wa salamu alayhi. He mentions this amazing incident that took place with the Holy Prophet. He says that, I was with the Prophet. This is in 192. You can look at it online. It's been translated. So inshallah, we can all become more acquainted with this amazing book. He says that I was with the Prophet when a group of the Quraysh came to see him. And they said to him that you have made a claim which is very big. And you have made a claim that none of your forefathers or your family members have ever made. If you can do something that we ask of you, then we will believe in you. We will believe that you are a messenger and you are a prophet. But if you can't do it, then we will know that you are a lying sorcerer. So the Holy Prophet asked them, okay, what is it that you are asking me to do? They say to him that we want you to make this tree uproot itself with its roots and come to you. So what does the Holy Prophet do? He says, O tree, if you believe in Allah, and if you believe in the day of judgment, and if you know that I am the messenger of Allah, then rise and become uprooted with all your roots and move towards me. What happens? The tree, amazingly, it becomes uprooted. And with all its roots, it moves towards the Holy Prophet with this very loud humming noise. And Amir al-Mu'mineen in this khutbah, he says, the noise was like the fluttering of the wings of a bird. So now this tree comes towards the Holy Prophet and it hovers in front of him. So now what happens? Do the Quraysh believe? They in fact very arrogantly, they say to him, okay, now we want you to command the tree. We want you to command the tree so that half of it comes towards you and the remaining half stays there. The Holy Prophet commands the tree to do just this. Exactly, that's what happens. Half of it comes towards him, the other half remains there. Third time, the Quraysh, very unbelievingly, they say that now command the tree, so that that half that is near you goes back and the tree remains as it was. So the Prophet, it commands the tree to do that, and that's exactly what happens. So then what happens in the end? Do they believe? Of course not. They still do not believe. However, Mawla Amir is there and he confesses his beliefs and he confesses to what he saw in this amazing incident. And the Quraysh, they call the Holy Prophet a lying sorcerer. This is wilayah takwiniyah, and this is mentioned in Nahju Balagha. But it also tells us that sometimes people, no matter what they see, even it was their own instigation, they're the ones who said that if you can do this, we'll believe in you. Still, sometimes, unfortunately, they are so far gone, they are so lost, that unfortunately, no matter what happens, they will never believe. But look at the other side. Mawla Amir, right from the start, he knew that the position of the Prophet was such, and he openly confesses his beliefs, and also he testifies to what he saw. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So these were examples of wilayah takwiniyah. And like I said, it is no wonder therefore that when we examine the position of the Imams in Allah's created order, the fact that the Imams are the channels of Allah's grace to reach us on the earth, and the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses them with the manifestation of His name Al-Wali, it is no wonder therefore that when the Imams, when these great people, pious people who are close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala depart from this world, especially when they depart under such awful and tragic circumstances, as was the case with Sayyidu Shuhada, it is no wonder therefore that the whole of creation will mourn that person. So indeed, these are two explanations as to how everything can mourn, and indeed did mourn Abu Abdullah. The first one based on the verses of the Quran and traditions, and the second one based on the position of the Imam in Allah's created system and Wilayat Taqwiniyyah. Now, of course, with regards to this manifestation of the name Al-Wali, the question sometimes arises that who can actually manifest this? Is it just one group? As we saw, there are these amazing ma'sumin that yes, they manifest this name Al-Wali. They have this ability to change creation bi-idhnillah, with the permission of Allah, at the highest possible level. They are at the top of that manifestation of the name Al-Wali. However, my brothers and sisters, it is possible for others to also manifest that name and have this ability, but at a lower level, at a much lower level. It all depends on how close that person is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is not just one group and that's it. No, others can do it, but at lower levels. I'll give you an example. Do we have an example from the Quran of a non-ma'asum manifesting the name Al-Wali and having Wilayat Taqwiniyyah? And you all know the example actually. The example is of Asif bin Barkhiyar. Asif bin Barkhiyar in Surah Al-Naml, verse number 40. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us an example, and this is really a lesson for us all, inshallah, because we all want to learn from these great personalities. We want to go higher and higher up the ladder of spirituality and get closer to Allah. Well, this is a non-ma'soom doing this. So you all know the story when Nabi Sulaiman, he has this conversation with Asif bin Barkhiyar, who was his wasi. And Asif is able to bring the throne of the Queen of Sheba in the twinkling of an eye. Isn't it? He was able to bring it in a twinkling. This is Wilayat Taqwiniyyah. This is him manifesting the name Al-Wali. But of course at that level. Why do I say at that level? You all know why I say at that level. Because the verse says that he was someone alladhi indahu ilmun min al-kitab, isn't it? He was someone who had some knowledge of the kitab, some knowledge of the book, and he was able to do this. So now let me ask you this. we learn that there are two things required for somebody to attain this level. That is knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ma'rifah. And secondly, submission. Submission. In one word, it is all about being Allah's abd, His true servant. And inshallah,